Jermaine, welcome to Diaspora Food Stories. How are you?
I am great. I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we've been following each other for some years. You're definitely a veteran in this industry, know so much, have shared so much. And what I love about your platform is how you bring in hip hop, which is just so amazing and so much fun. And so looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have today.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. I love that you love and respect the art. So no, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you again for having me.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, for our listeners, let's give a little bit about who you are. We're going to also share the article that we did, but let's just give them a little taste of who is Jermaine Stone.
Yeah, it's funny. I think that I guess the best way to summarize me these days is a sommelier. I say that with air quotes
Okay.
because I'm gonna be full disclosure. I'll be completely honest. I don't consider myself a sommelier just because of a lot of time. Often somms have specific training and they'll go and become certified. I got into the wine industry through the operations side of the business,
Mm,
and everything that I learned on the job. So everything that I learned about wine, I learned through speaking with winemakers, through being in vineyards,
mhm.
from reading labels, from tasting with collectors. So it was really like applied knowledge during the entire time. And the other thing with Psalms is like their skills in the restaurant space are
Mhm.
there's like a actual like skill to it.
Right.
And I always say I'm kind of a hater. I don't like I want to be a part of the good time too. I feel and so I always give Psalms that much more credit than I give myself, because that piece about hospitality, there's a lot of heart included in that, and there's a lot of hard work that they put into it. However, the general term is, someone that is a steward of wine and teaches people about wine, and
Mhm.
enthusiast. And that I most certainly am. The depth of knowledge is absolutely there. I've been all over the world in the wine business. And just to summarize for the audience that doesn't know me, I grew up in the Bronx, rapping my entire life, thinking I was going to be a rapper. And, when I turned college age to put myself through college, I started working at a wine auction house. Excuse me, just one moment. Yes, go ahead. No, take one of the. Yeah, you get. Yeah. Okay, take some of the iced tea. All right. Sorry about that. When so I started out rapping, assumed I was going to be a rapper my entire life. Everyone around me did. When I turned college age, I began working at a wine auction house.
Well,
Just
was that intentional? Why?
no, no, it wasn't wine. I just wanted to help pay the bills for college. It was any job that I could have a set schedule.
Okay.
And just because at the time I wanted to get an office job. Full disclosure, I started going to school because I knew that was the only way that I could get a business loan so that I could open a catering hall. That was what I wanted to
Okay.
do. And in order to get the loan, I was like, okay, I need to have a business administrative degree as well as business administrative experience. But if you didn't work in an office before, it's difficult to be hired to work in an office. So I said, I'll work at any company that I
Mm.
can just work my way up. So I found the a warehouse job where I was the shipping clerk. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, office job. I can sit down and enter the end of day reports in the computer. Now that's administrator. But in all actuality, look, I was coming from Barnes and Noble. So,
Wow.
but and I saw that, and I saw that as an opportunity to work my way up into business and learn about the administrative part of business. And I fell in love with the wine industry. Everyone was so inviting. Everyone really wanted to teach, and I was just a hard worker. I
Mhm.
came in with the mentality that you one, want people to enjoy working with you, and two, you always want to remain an asset, because if you're
Mm.
not an asset, you're a liability.
Absolutely,
so,
absolutely. Now, did
so
you have any
mhm.
wine knowledge? Was wine in the home growing up or
Not
anything?
not one bit. You know, my family, I have a Jamaican background. My parents
Okay.
are Jamaican, so all they drank was Red Stripe and Heineken. But and the thing is, when I got into wine, it was at such an impressionable age. I was packing things. Like, I worked at the retail side, but we also had to ship out all of the auction goods. So when
Okay.
I would see these auction bottles come out, they would be super old, and everyone treated auction like it was really, really important. So I began to develop a reverence, but then there was the why,
Okay.
and my job as a shipping clerk was to look at the invoices of what was purchased versus, and compare that against what was going out before it left. So I had to learn how to read wine labels. But
Mm.
you're looking at these invoices, you're seeing how much this stuff costs,
Wow.
and beginning to see just the craze and lifestyle that was around it. That's what intrigued me. And then, as I started to understand the business around wine, I realized how, the wine auction market, there was really like 8 to 9 different sides of it. They sold it to the person at retail first, then the person paid them to store it, then they paid them to ship it to them, then they paid them to come and pick it
Wow.
back up, then they paid them to sell it, and then someone paid to buy it. So it was very, very, it was interesting. I thought the business aspect was interesting.
Wow.
um
So we're going to stop there at that intersection. And I'm going to ask this question and we're going to go down this road and then we're going to bring them together. So, from one of my favorite movies, Brown Sugar, let's ask you the question: when did you fall in love with hip hop?
Man, I can honestly say I fell in love with hip hop in 94.
Okay.
And I only know this, of course, because of my podcast, Wine and Hip Hop. And in 94, that was, Notorious B.I.G.'s first album. And at Ready to Die, that was when it all kind of sunk into me, and I just had to listen to it over and over and over and all day. That was when I began to become consumed by it. But also, we had a karaoke machine. So when we would buy those singles, we would there would be like an instrumental on it, and then me and my friends would freestyle, and we started having radio shows on our own. So, but yeah, it was 94. So I was about 10 when
Okay.
I fell in
Wow.
love with
Wow.
rap. Yep. Yep.
So, wanting to
A
be
beautiful
a
time.
rapper? It was. It was. I remember my dad came home with Curtis Blow. These are the breaks. I will never forget him bringing that album home, and that was that.
Oh no, I mean, the thing about hip hop is just the creativity, the artistry in the words, like what you can do with one, when you can say a word and have it mean two different things or even three different things. Sometimes you think about the complexity in wine that exists, and why wine is complex, the different layers of flavors that you wouldn't expect, that go together and develop over time as you're tasting them. Rhymes really transform themselves and have the capability to transform themselves in the same way.
Mhm.
And, a lot of that is, and just to go back to the sommelier term, a sommelier, I look at sommeliers as rappers of the wine industry, because they have to apply metaphors, but they have to be such abstract metaphors for
Mhm.
you to highlight a personal truth within yourself. I can't tell you this tastes like cherries and
Right.
you understand it if you don't know what a cherry is.
Right.
That cherry, you have to even like the cherry to think that that's good. So if that's not something that you understand, I have to find something that you do. But essentially, it's creating a metaphor with an idea and a flavor. That's what sommeliers have to do. And hip hop artists, they have an unlimited amount of things that they can create metaphors with. So I've found that, and that's why it's interesting that my show is called Street Sound,
Mhm.
because I've found that I'm able to find parallels between different concepts, but relate them to wine to highlight personal truths within people.
So let's talk about then when, as you're working as a shipping clerk and you're starting to advance in the industry, one, when was the moment that you said, you know what, I think I like this and I want to continue moving forward in this industry? And then two, when did you start to bring the two together?
Well, I actually started to bring the two together back in 2016. Excuse
Okay.
me, just one moment. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Iceland, I'm on the phone. Dad, I was trying to tell you something. Okay. Can you give me like that from the bag? You can, but you need to leave me in here for a little while, okay? I'm on the phone. Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
They've been instructed before I came in.
Okay.
I
So what I'll
believe.
do is I'll repeat that. How about that? So we'll have a clean cut. Okay.
Perfect.
So let's go back to wine and have two questions. One, when did you say, you know what, I want to move forward in this industry as you were progressing from shipping clerk, growing and growing? And then two, when did you start to bring them together?
Yeah, I'd say as far as progressing from shipping clerk on, I was able to move up in the business. I wouldn't say pretty quickly, but gradually, through hard work. And when I was at Zachy's, like I mentioned, I started in 2004.
Mhm.
That was in the very early developments of the auction department. At that time, they were not a global company yet. At that time, they had just had their first Los Angeles auction, and
Mhm.
my background was in operations and logistics. So as the company grew, I was able to grow. I worked at Zachy's for 9.5 years.
Okay.
I then began working at Wally's Auctions. Wally's is a Los Angeles-based retailer that developed the wine auction house. So at that time, in 2013, I became one of their founding directors.
Okay.
And in 2016, when I left wine auction, at that time, the auction house had downsized, and I would have needed to move to Los Angeles to keep my job.
Okay.
However, at the time, my mom was sick with stage 4 cancer, so that was just not an option.
Yeah.
And I had a lot going on, so I wasn't able to I didn't want to go straight back into the workforce. I personally felt like I kind of hit a little bit of a ceiling in wine auction, not knowing what was in front of me. So I said, I'll just move forward in the fine wine consulting space because I could have the flexibility to do what I needed to do with home, but at the same time still make money. But to promote yourself as a fine wine consultant can be pretty expensive.
Mhm.
So that's why I started the podcast, Wine and Hip Hop. Just finding a way to dig down into me and who I was and what was unique about me in that space. I knew that I was able to connect with lots of people throughout the years through hip hop.
Mhm.
And that had been something that was unique to me because of being a young dude, because of being a Black dude, my background in hip hop, and still long lasting and maintaining those connections.
Mhm.
Um, that was something that always stuck with me. So once I began to consult, then that the way that I consulted the way that I marketed myself as a consultant was to simply have my podcast, Wine and Hip Hop.
Mhm.
That way I could stay in front of the timeline of the collectors that were familiar with me and would want to work with me. And
Right.
also, I knew and understood that the wine community did enjoy hip hop, and there was a bit of uh we're misjudged,
Mhm.
just like the hip hop community was misjudged. However, it was still based in art. So I found that I would, one, be able to stay in front of my clientele, and two, be able to grow that clientele because of because the fact that I saw that, interestingly enough, the wine industry would be going in the direction that we're in right now today, which is
Nice.
wanting to approach and connect with more Black and younger consumers. So it was me trying to make a few steps forward when I began to bridge wine and hip hop culture.
Got you. So, I want to talk about the good and the bad, right? Because I know it wasn't necessarily all and hasn't been probably all rosy and
Hmm.
things. So what are some, if you were looking back and you're telling this to someone who's looking at coming up behind you, right? Not that we want to discourage, that's not what
Of
it's about,
course.
but you want to be realistic, right?
Right.
And so what would you say some of the challenges and the obstacles that you've have found that you've had to overcome and work through?
You know what? You've put that in a very nice way. you know, I when I'm hiring people and when I'm speaking with people, I try to keep it so real because as you know, in life, anything that you want is going to require significant sacrifice.
Mhm.
And it has been sacrifice after sacrifice since day one, and that's ultimately what it's going to be. When I'm hiring people, I let them know, like, hey, FYI, this job's going to suck,
Mhm.
but it's going to be gratifying.
Right.
And there really is something to the when you want to stop something, you got to think about why you started and what it means and what the intention is. So I always saw a bigger purpose
Mm.
in what I am doing.
Right.
The goal of what I'm doing has always been to elevate the perception of Black men in America.
Mm.
And I realized that in moving around in different circles, I was always treated differently, or I knew how to communicate differently because of my familiarity with the wine space and the fine wine space specifically. Sometimes I might be on a train and someone overhears a conversation, but then they're intrigued, like, well, what's this dude nobody can?
Mm.
And begin opening up conversations. So as far as difficulties, when I started this, there were actually people that just said, just don't do it. You're wasting your time. This is not going to work. I mean, I've lost friends, close friends, because they ultimately did not felt like this would be a waste of time.
Wow.
And oh, for sure, absolutely. But as things go on, you continue to grow, and it gets difficult. Sometimes you don't even see what you're working for. So you always have to go back, and what keeps you is finding that you are making progress.
Right.
People are contacting you and saying, hey, I'm learning so much about wine from you. And I knew a guy that I met, and he was following me online. He first connected with me. I was doing an Instagram live for Wines of Germany, talking
Okay.
about Riesling. He began drinking Riesling. He got into Riesling from that tasting. He continued connecting with me online, asking a lot of questions. Fast forward down the line, last year, I ran into him in Portugal on
Mm.
vacation, just out there enjoying the wine scene. So he's grown from Riesling all the way up to the point where he's now taking personal vacations to enrich his wine experience. So I see things like that. Aside from accolades and things like that, I'm now beginning to see a lot of those changes. But this is not it's not an easy thing to do, to create new ground, because I work with clients creating activations and marketing campaigns, but we're
Right.
changing the ideas around wine. So I have to change. I got to do a lot of mind changing just to be able to feed my daughter. So that sort of thing. But I mean, look at what we've been able to build. I've went from working with small private collectors to working with multiple multi-billion-dollar organizations.
Nice.
Like Constellation Brands is one of my clients.
Nice.
Germany's one of my clients. Bordeaux. We work with Gallo. Like, so when you think about just the percentage of the wine industry that represents,
Mhm.
I can look back and see quantifiable gains. And it's one of them things, to know that you're just getting started. It's extremely inspiring.
Awesome, awesome. So again, being a veteran then in this industry, what are some things that your changes, good changes that you're seeing? Because, we've both been in it for a minute, from
Hmm.
me from a media perspective and a wine enthusiast, you as a professional. We've seen a lot of changes, some trying to embrace that, you know what? People of color actually drink wine. We make wine, for
Hmm.
so long. I mean, even going back as much as maybe 5 or so years ago, there was still the surprise that Black people make wine. And I'm just like, oh my goodness.
We
So
do things.
hopefully we're starting to kick that silly
Yes.
Motion out of here, right? But we're seeing more Black wine labels. We're seeing more Black people come forward. But what are you seeing from a business perspective that's moving forward?
Yeah, a big thing that I'm seeing is one, the interest to want to change.
Okay.
The interest to want to invite, the interest to understand, like, all right, I remember, you know, when George Floyd was murdered in 2020, so much changed,
Hmm.
and it's like people woke up and discovered Black people. Like, whoa, what do you mean? Black people drink wine too,
Okay,
you
right,
know. But I will say that I've been glad to see that it's stuck.
okay,
There are companies that have made, like, I think Constellation made it like a $10 million commitment
yeah,
to diversify over the next 10 years, so it's like long standing commitments and things like that, and things that I've seen them do too, like the collaboration that you saw with me with Street Sign. Like, these are people sticking to their word of saying, like, hey, we want to find ways to do this,
right,
but then coming to the people that are the leaders of these communities and asking, like, okay, well, what do we do? Because look, everybody doesn't know, and unless we have the conversation, then nothing changes. So I do believe that moment started a lot of conversations, and there have been a ton of people that have fallen off and not stuck through. But what I'm seeing is the interest
yeah,
and the understanding that that this customer needs to be spoken to in a different language than we have been speaking to them. And also, I'm finding that the cultural aspect of wine is now beginning to be realized, because, I mean, you know how it was in the past. The way that wines were marketed was, you send it to writers, you hopefully get a good score, you pay for some ads, you have the winemaker come out and do a dinner. But this winemaker, the person makes wine. It's not like they're like a person that, like, so it doesn't, it's not, there will be a disconnect if I'm not interested in the technical aspects.
hmm,
And I think that wine has come into a place now where we're in this amazing exploratory phase where people are trying to discover. And because there is this discovery phase that allows room for us to just throw stuff at the wall to get to new audiences. So I think that overall, across the board, there's a lot being thrown at the wall to reach new audiences. But the main thing with so many wineries now is to try to make wine younger.
mm,
But the ultimate thing that you can see from that is, Black culture really defines American culture in a
mm.
lot of ways. So if you're trying to attack, like, we control the cool, we could call it what it is.
I like
You know what
that.
I mean? It's we call it what. So if you want to be cool, then you're gonna have to, sprinkle a little Black in there. You know what I'm
I hear
saying?
you. I mean, you're leaving dollars on the table, and it makes no
So,
sense. No
so I'm
sense.
I'm very glad to see that, across the board, that's being welcomed with open arms. Like last October, I hosted a wine and hip hop end of harvest celebration at Clos de Vougeot
Oh,
in Burgundy. Literally one of the most prestigious sites in
nice.
one of the most prestigious regions in the world, 1,000-year-old castle that has never played hip hop music in there. I
Right.
had
Awesome.
Mike D from the Beastie Boys on the ones and twos. I was down to my undershirt. I'm emceeing in the crowd. Like, we have break dancers. And the day after, and mind you, like, people don't even know what the inside of the Clos de Vougeot looks like. It's usually like old white men and suits and everything. I'm in there with the wife beater with Jordans on and Air Force Ones, and it was so welcoming. Everyone enjoyed it so much. The following day, they asked us if we could book for this year. So we're
Wow.
already in the plans for this year and already in plans to make it even bigger and better.
Now, who
When
comes
we
to that? Is that open to anybody?
open to the public, and the beautiful thing is, and this is why it was important to me to highlight how we can all be a little bit misjudged. the team at the Clos de Vougeot, well, overall, the people that put this together for this to happen, it
Mhm.
was the winemakers of Burgundy. You
Mm,
know, the winemakers of Burgundy, led by Jeremy Sace from Domaine du Jacques. It was organized with Haute Co, which is also a Burgundian art and wine experiential company. You know, that's who put this together. You know, they're friends of mine.
mhm.
So, you know, we had done this all in the year prior, but it's not cheap to put that party together. That was all paid for by the winemakers of Burgundy, who don't need that. It's just, this is how they also wanted to celebrate.